future tech queens in the making.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
Thank you so much for joining us today, Selena. I'm so excited to chop it up with you and learn more about SARCOR and all of your other endeavors.
Thank you for having me.
Awesome. So, first, I want to start off by letting you know that Tech Queen on the scene, we actually highlight a different tech queen every single month.
Okay.
So, we'll be highlighting you for at the end of April, and we'll do a blog post and a YouTube video.
Okay.
Okay?
Cool.
Cool, because we value representation and we want, young girls to know, like, hey, you might have never thought about engineering or, scientist type stuff, but these are women that are flourishing in these industries, so maybe you should take a look at it.
Absolutely.
Cool.
Thank you for considering me.
Awesome. So let's start off by asking, when did you start your company? How did you get started? Was it a certain passion behind it, or was it more so, this will be a great way to, make some extra income? So tell us your thought process behind everything.
Well, entrepreneurship, I feel like, was in my blood, even though I didn't know it was in my blood until I actually stepped forward and had to choose what my path was going to be. I have a degree in civil engineering. I had a passion. I thought I was going to be an architect. When I was growing up, I was like, I'm going to be an architect, just from my old episode of Sesame Street, and when I was a little baby. And from that time on, I really thought I was going to be an architect until I went to a STEM program at Tennessee State University. The College of Engineering offered a program called Minority Introduction to Engineering. Some people will liken it to the format of Upward Bound, but it was always just engineering. So we got to see various disciplines of engineering. But in my senior year at Ramsey, I was in a program similar to what you see with Birmingham Promise and Birmingham Ed Foundation. I did internships in my senior year. I got to intern with an architecture firm my first semester, and Alabama Power my second semester. And because I was in a quandary trying to figure out architecture, electrical engineering, or civil engineering. Well, I had exposure to a lot of the lab work that we would do at TSU during the summer program as civil engineering. I said, I like, breaking concrete cylinders. I like some of the things that we saw. Okay, I really want to do bridge design and things. I like those transportation aspects. And then I realized I didn't want to be an architect. I wasn't that great at trying to figure out how to make things pretty. Buildings, and my creative sense was not there. And I started to realize that I had a more strategic thought process versus make it pretty and then figure it out kind of thing. Architects are great when they're needed, but that just wasn't my strength.
Right.
And but I had great mentors throughout high school to help me figure out the career path. I couldn't have an engineering company without that engineering degree. Right, I would know where to start, what to do. It's not to say that it's impossible, but it really helps if you have a background in engineering, right? And so, fast forwarding, I graduated college with my degree in civil and worked for the Department of Transportation for a while. Left there, went to a private company. They laid me off on my 4-year anniversary date. Now you ask, like, when did I start my company? I founded it 2 years before I got laid off. Okay. I founded it on paper. I had, when people say, I was one of those people say, I'm in business, right? But didn't have a clue what being in business was about. I had an EIN number, all right? That was, you hear so many people say, I'm going to give me a tax ID number, right? I'm going to be in business.
I made it.
And so, I did the thing that most entrepreneurs do. I go log in and give me a tax ID number and say, I'm going to have me some business write-offs and all this stuff. And there were some things that I had learned between the time I graduated and the time I got laid off. Now, I only had 6 years of experience in a professional space once I graduated. But I did multi-level marketing. I learned about presentations and a whole lot of things, during that part. That's why I'm able to do presentations so well. I was with a flip chart, out here slinging juice.
Yes, old school flip work. I'm telling you, it still works.
It does. You know, the basics of just using a PowerPoint presentation on paper and just flipping the pages and learning to take notes. I had so many notes. There's so much rejection that was a part of that process. You know, like, why are you here to sell me a $45 bottle of juice? Well, I didn't realize that all these things that I was doing led me to a path where I was going to have to deal with some confrontation, some hardships, a lot of no's in this industry. But founded it 2008. Decided to do SBA workshops. This was during the Great Recession. Okay, so a lot of your tech queens may be too young to really understand that. But think about how it was during COVID, right? And people weren't working. A lot of people lost their jobs. The economy was in a spiral. You know, things were pretty bad, and the world around me, the little bubble that I had placed myself in, was starting to get uncomfortable. But fortunately, one of my mentors was like, "You need to read Who Moved My Cheese." Now, the book had been on my shelf for a while,
the book
right?
you told me to get.
I did, yeah. So I read that book, and I started realizing that my office dynamics were changing, right? But I still had things I need to pay for. I had a house, had a car, and I had debt that I need to pay for from college credit card debt. I still want to be in business, and so I read that book. I had been going to SBA workshops to learn how to have a business. You know, the free workshops, because I had no money. All right, I had bad credit and no money. Okay, and I had no one to say, here's a fortune of money to just go and be great with. You know, play around and go start whatever your dream is or whatever it might be. So this was me bootstrapping from day one, and my dad would tell me, and it was not until I got laid off that it really clicked what it meant. But you know, all my life through like high school and college, he would say, when you're full, everybody's full. But it didn't mean nothing until I realized that this is the chance for me, the opportunity for me to take a chance on myself. All right, because I didn't have a kid, I didn't have a spouse to take care of. I had a mortgage, but I was renting out my house. You know, I didn't have the pressures of adulting.
So you can go 200%.
I could go all in and not have to worry about what failure looks like, because I didn't have to feed a kid, you know, and I could eat at home, right? And he let me know this is my opportunity to take a chance on myself, and so that was the biggest support that I had. And my grandmother would tell me that before she passed, she said, you'll never become a millionaire if you don't go to your meetings. Because I hated going to meetings. People don't believe it, but I'm an introvert. I actually enjoyed being in the house during COVID. You know? Yeah. Because I didn't have to go anywhere, right?
I know you was in
and it gave me a lot of time to do a lot of things. I worked on systems and processes and automating some things to where I didn't have to be the person onboarding and showing people every time I get a new person. The process is all on video. I have a library of things. But yeah, 2010, on my 4-year anniversary date, I got laid off, and I started with the Army of One, $2,400 and bad credit, and here we are today. So
that sounds like an amazing journey. And I'm glad that you shared that, because one thing that I took from it was being able to take rejection and also just the hardships that come along during the journey, in that whole phase of just becoming and growing this company that started from your mind. And in the beginning, I know you said a little bit about you were trying to find your lane and figure out, is architects not my lane? I like to be more strategic versus design, and figuring out that whole process. Do you have any tips for any aspiring tech queens or business owners that you may want to share that may be in that process of trying to find their lane, dealing with hardships? Maybe they're a side hustler, they have their EIN, but they're trying to figure out, how am I going to make this dream come to fruition?
Oh yeah, I got all kinds of tips, but I don't know if we have much time for that.
You could just give them one.
I'll give a few.
I
give a few, but one, you got to start with what's going on between your ears, right? My best supervisor, I had many supervisors. I only had 6 years experience. But I only had 2 jobs out of college before I started. But his name was Hayden.
Mm-hmm.
Hayden told me, he said, you got to get the rah-rah out.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, the rah-rah? He was like, the stuff that you're telling yourself. He said, we paid you to think.
Mm-hmm.
You're a thinker. You're an engineer. You're supposed to find the solutions to problems. And so he said, if you're self-doubting yourself from the time you wake up and always questioning what your abilities are, you got too much rah-rah going on in your head. And, and he was from Trinidad, right? So he had different terms, and it was, but he took me under his umbrella and just helped me believe in myself that I can do this thing, right? I can do this field. And even though I would be outside on a project site and I might be the only woman and I was the youngest thing out there, and I might be the most educated person out there too, because it was sometimes in construction that we might just be like, guys who may have trades, but I had all these letters behind my name or whatever, right? I had my MBA and all this stuff. I was working on my MBA and I had some other certifications at the time. But yeah, he said, get the rah-rah out. Now, how do you get the rah-rah out? So people will just like, I understand positive thinking and all that stuff. No, you got to really get into the book. So there's this one book that I mentioned Who Moved My Cheese, okay? That's going to teach you to embrace change.
Okay.
All right. And to be aware of the things that you can or can't control. And if you've ever done a SWOT analysis on a business or a situation to understand its strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats on a business, do it on yourself. All right, because now you're going to be able to figure out what you're on a personal side, who you are, on at your core. All right, even if there's all kind of things, disc assessments and all those things, right? But for those who can't understand, can't go pay for a disc assessment and all the coaching and stuff that comes around that, do a SWOT analysis on yourself. All right, you can get a lot of information about you right then, and then you can do it on your business idea, your business concept. All right. 2, there's another book, 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. They even have one for teens, Stephen Covey. But read that. The first thing is begin with the end in mind. All right. So when I started my business, I said, okay, well, I need to be able to, it was about surviving for me. All right. It was about how can I take care of me? How can I pay my bills? How much money I needed to generate? How much time I had to generate that in? All right. And so my end in mind was, can I make it 2 years on this? All right. So my first plan was, can I make it 2 years? If not, I got to make it through this recession. Okay. And then by 2012, I was like, I'm pretty good at this. I started getting my wings under myself, and I realized that I had some other strengths that I had not been tapped into. And then the other one's called The Dream Giver by Bruce Wilkerson. All right.
I hope y'all are picking up these tips. This is golden. Pick up what she's putting down.
Thank you. The Dream Giver is going to tell you how to deal with the naysayers. All right. You're going to have people that's disguised as family who really do have an interest in seeing you do well and want the best for you, right? But they're going to say, oh, your little business. Your friends are going to say, you can't hang out with us. Or you may have that delayed gratification thing. Like, I practice delayed gratification even to this day. That I might not go out and buy some of the designer brands that I want. I'm just going to keep what I have really nice, because I have this bigger picture of what the long-term success means for me. Yesterday I was on Facebook, I give myself a few minutes of Facebook every day, about 10 minutes or so. And I saw a post, and it had something to do with people not rewarding themselves, entrepreneurs really not really saying, taking a celebration break when they achieve a goal. They're just on to the next goal, right? And I said, like, what accomplishments? This is a step along the path of what my real success thing is. Yes, I may have an award. Yes, I may get a recognition. Yes, we might get a big project. Yes, I might hire a new team member that can help bring out the capacity that we need. But my end in mind that I have, that 5-year, 10-year plan, the big, bold, hairy, audacious goal that I have, these are things along that process, along that path that I have to do in order to do the big thing, you know. And once I do the big thing, you know, I don't know if I'll stop, right? I got this idea of what the big thing is that I keep close to my chest. And me, God, and my daughter. You know what those things are, right? I might tell my husband one day. But no, just wait, he does too. It's just me joking. But yeah, I keep those things pretty close. You got to keep your dreams close, y'all. You know, don't go out and just say and just tell people your game plan. You know, you just need to provide enough information to get to the next step. Because if you tell people your game plan, one, you speaking things to them that they might not want for you, and so they might put things into the atmosphere to go against you. You don't know who you're in the book, The Dream Giver that I mentioned. He mentioned the border bullies. All right, there's this thing. You don't know who your border bullies would be. You don't know what they look like. They might be your best friend. Heck, sometimes it could even be somebody in your church. You never know. But you need to make sure you have had that conversation with God, your higher power, right? You know what there needs to be for you. You know what's burning inside of you.
Because he told you.
He told you, right? And so, what does it take for you to be that, to walk in your ordained ministry? Everybody might not be called to preach. But I believe that the journey that I've been on and the things that I do and the lives I impact with our projects is what my ministry is.
Absolutely. That's one of them ones that y'all gonna have to watch on repeat because she just dropped so much. And one thing that I really grasped from that is when you talked about delayed gratification equals longevity. So let's definitely practice those tips from our tech queen. And also, do you have any fun facts? Because I like to say tech queens know all the fun facts. So if you have like any interesting scientific fun facts that maybe a lot of people may not know, let's share.
About myself?
Just about
just
anything.
general?
Like we had one tech queen that is in the aerospace industry, and she was telling us that WD-40 was actually created for rockets.
Oh yeah.
And I'm like, so that's why it works on the door hinge so well. You know, just little stuff like that.
Like that. Okay. The nerd in me is really kind of geeking out right now on which one to.
Which one? You have so many.
But I would say, like, okay, since I love roadway design, I love streetscapes and sidewalks and things like that. Pay attention to when you see a bike lane or a ramp approaching at the edge of a sidewalk or whatever, because that's, we refer to, like people taking DEI away and stuff like that, but all those things are they're ADA. They're things that make people's lives better, and advocate for those things in your neighborhood. If your neighborhood doesn't have sidewalks or a bike lane, or you need a stop sign or a traffic light, you can advocate for that for yourself. It's not just for downtown. It's not just for affluent neighborhoods. There's things out there, but that just use it one day. Like if you're riding, if you like riding your bike, or you got a kid and want to ride a bike, on a weekday morning, bring them around into the city where there's some bike lanes, and let your kids ride in the bike lane and ride with them. Use the sidewalks, use the trails. We do a lot of those designs, and it's interesting. If you just stop and just look at it, and you will see various details, from the green striping to maybe some the little bumps on the mats at the edge of a sidewalk for people who are blind or wheelchairs. They know that at the end they have their stick for being blind. There's a lot of things out there that we don't really pay attention to, and I refer to those things as the invisible. Right. Because we just want them, but sometimes we don't know we want them until it's there.
Or how important it is. Because if, God forbid, one of us has an accident and we're in a wheelchair, we're going to see how important it is to people in their everyday life. There's one thing I want to share with you since you brought that up. I do have a colleague that was telling me a story about when they had to build a building out from scratch, and it was a requirement that they had a certain amount of handicapped parking spots. And he remembered thinking like, well, this is taking up additional time, additional space. I don't see why we have to do this. And he actually did end up in an accident. He was able to see like, okay, this is extremely important. We need these ramps. These handicapped spots are important. So, really take that in and be considerate. So, is there anything else that you want to share?
Well, I want people to just, after you watch this, don't let this be the last time you watch. All right. I want your feedback to see if you have actually picked up the books, if they make sense to you. All right. Hit me up on social. Selena Rodgers Dickerson. Rodgers has a D in it, and you can find me. And but I want to know your feedback. I want to know if the books help. I want to know if the comments help. But this is not, like you said, it's not something you watch one time and think you have it all. Probably watch it one time and fully listen, and then come back with a notebook and take the notes that you want to. I was listening to an audiobook on my way here, and there's one reason why I was a few minutes late, because I needed to take notes. And I was listening to the leadership habits of Nick Saban, right? And you might ask, like, why are you listening to something about a football coach? Because Nick Saban is one of the greatest leaders that we've had in our generation, all right? He's had to do change management on a number of occasions, and he's on his way to being a billionaire. All right, so that might be somebody I want to listen to about his leadership skills. I'm like, what did you do that I can put in my life? But I had to pull over so I could take notes from that audiobook. I'm like, I need to catch this, and I kept hitting rewind. I'm like, if I lose it, if I stop, if I get all the way here, I'm gonna get off track, and I'm gonna forget what I knew. But sometimes I have to just take it and write it down. So you may need to do that, and don't be afraid to get an audiobook if you don't have time to read. People might say,
listen to it while you drive.
Right. Get your time in. If I'm sitting in traffic for 42 minutes trying to get to downtown, that's 42 minutes of new knowledge that I've gained. All right. So take advantage of that time. We're done with excuses. We are almost at the second half of 2025. The year's been going by pretty fast. Don't keep these habits up that you've been doing and wondering, well, I'm not seeing the progress. What have you changed in your daily habits to get to what you really want, what you said you wanted at the beginning of the year? We do every day what we truly believe, but everything else is just talk. That's not me. That's not me. That's from one of my mentors.
Everything else is just talk.
Yeah, everything. But what we do every day is what we actually believe and what we practice, and our habits are going to control that. It's going to take a lot of discipline.
Yeah.
So
but it's good that you got an expert.
Yeah.
That you can listen to.
I do.
You've been in this game long enough not to make those same mistakes.
They're gonna put me with a fractional CFO to help me make the better financial decisions. Like I had a CPA, got the bookkeeper, got the basic things. But then as CFO, I was managing my own money, and what I see is payroll, rent, expenses, not really putting things back for profit sharing, some other stuff. I need to be able to provide better benefits and stuff for my team and stuff, right? Well, what if I switch from just trying to figure out how to manage their 401k or trying to figure out how I'm going to go get Blue Cross, put them with a PEO. It's going to help me recruit better if I can offer a better benefits package, because now I'm in a group of people versus trying to do things individually for a group of 5, but having the working capital that I need will allow me to be able to pay that 12% off the top of the PEO. But I'm like, well, it made me realize too, well, yeah, you got to pay 12%, but how much time am I using on my own trying to manage a 401k when that's not my expertise?
Right.
You know what I mean? Yeah. Or trying to sit and figure out a handbook and stuff when that's not, I can call an HR consultant, but they're not in my office every day. I'm doing timesheets, I'm doing all these things. and I'm pulling that 12% is going to be 12% of my time.
Right.
Plus.
Doing a whole nother job.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I tell you, they don't tell you about it when you first start. I'm like, I really got to become an HR expert too, and accounting, and this and that. Too.
Have you read Traction? I think I told you about Traction. Did I tell you about Traction in there?
You told me about Who Got My Cheese.
Okay, so Victor also put me in this other book called Traction, and that's what made me start thinking about my leadership team differently. So I don't have to wear all those hats. Right? We in the book Traction. It's called. When Victor gave it to me, he told me to read it. I was like, oh, okay. I just, he always give me books. But then it was not until somebody, I can't remember who told me, they said, you need to get in the pump with Shagan. And so I'm like, that took me 4 months to get on that man calendar. All right. Mm-hmm. I thought I was busy. Shagan, he's that dude. All right. And so Shagan that dude, and he's like, you need an operating system. And I'm like, I don't think an operating system. My head went to Android, iOS. That's what I'm thinking. I'm thinking Mac and PC. And I'm like, what you talking about? And so he was like, no, you need an operating system for how you run your business. And I had no clue what he was talking about. He said, this is a book called Traction. About entrepreneurial operating system. I was like, that's the book Victor told me to read 2 months ago. And so when Shagan told me about it, I went home, picked it up.
Don't tell Victor that.
I did tell Victor that. I had to give Victor his flowers, right? I had to let him know that I didn't hear him the first time.
I picked it up after Shagan told me.
I told him the truth. I did, because I wanted him to know. It humbled me, right? Mm-hmm. And he was trying to help me, and I didn't hear him the first time. But then he was like, I told you, he didn't rub it in or whatever. Yeah. But he was more glad that I actually picked it up. But it tells you about the different seats. Now, it's not an org chart. People want to say, oh, it's just an org chart. Nah, it's not an org chart. It's a non-org chart. It's a system. And the thing about having a system is that it can be duplicated. Mm-hmm. So no matter who is in the seat, the system runs itself. All right. And you can be in whichever, so if your strength is HR, you can still be the owner of the company and be the HR person. If your strength is IT, but you need somebody running strategy, you can still be the owner of the company and you running that particular seat for operations and let somebody else run the strategy for the company.
I think I'm going to read that one first.
Yeah, have a lot of entrepreneurs. That's probably one of the tips I probably should have gave. But I think if it's for entry level people who haven't been through a whole lot of stuff right now, under getting your head right is probably the biggest thing before so you're in a good place to be. I think you should do it. And they have implementers around here. Victor has these webinars. I was on one about 2 weeks ago with someone, the guy who owns Heavenly Donuts or something like that. Mm-hmm. He's now an implementer. He does not run his company. He still owns Heavenly Donuts, but because he has the system in place, he can just go out and teach people how to do the system.
Be a visionary leader.
And it's exactly what it's called, visionary. It is called visionary. The top of the seat is visionary, right? And that's what he does. And that's where I am. So this next round of the rebrand of SARCOR has a lot of me coming out of being able to do the operations and a whole lot of other stuff and move someone else into some of these positions and moving myself out the way. Because if I keep doing it the way that I've been doing it, I might have some on paper success. I might get another award. Mm-hmm. We'll still do well. But I don't want to just do well. I told you about that big goal that I have, right? It's what does that look like afterwards?
So you're going on 17 years and you are at the point where you're pulling back or you've already have your stuff in place to where it can run itself?
It's got to do better. Now, I was able to step away for about 2.5 months. I stepped away for about good 3 weeks when I had surgery last year.
And your team and your system handled everything. Held it down for 3 weeks, just as if you was there.
Yep. I ran payroll.
That's the goal right there. That's the goal.
And so I knew then that I had created something that was sustainable because the company was still. And then even when I came back, I only came back part time. When I say part time, I'm like 2 hours a day, checks and emails. And as time went on, I was supposed to be down for about 3 months, but I worked from home. But because I took the time to make systems, and I realized people ain't reading no SOPs. Ain't nobody want to read no book. Don't know no binder full of paper.
And then you got to go look it up and send it to them.
But they will go look at a video for 2 minutes. They will go do that and figure out, well, what did Selena say need to be done? Because it's right there. And if they need to see the paper, I got to follow. I'm very systematic on even how we save our drawings. So if somebody is out for any reason and we need to figure out what the last thing was, the way the nomenclature for the date is set to where we'll know the last time the last thing was done, the last file saved, the last report written. We don't have to go search because somebody made up a title. There's a nomenclature and a system to how to save the file so we can go in and anybody can find it. So it's kind of standardized.
Cool.
Yeah.
Definitely gonna pick that one up ASAP for sure.
Please do. And but what you find is that some people won't be able to make the cut. So I was introduced to the book in 2023. I started trying to implement it in 2023. By this time in 2024, I had let go about 4 people on my team because they weren't gonna
make the cut. Okay.
And I was able to produce more work with less frustration.
Less people. That's what's up.
Get it, want it, have capacity to do it is what the book talks about.
I can't wait to dig in.
Yes.
But congratulations. Actions speak louder than words, y'all. So let's make sure that we keep pushing forward. And before we go, I just want to say I saw Selena at a restaurant one day and we got to talking, and she's a wealth of knowledge, you guys. So that's why I keep reiterating, you might want to play this back and really pick up everything that she's putting down, because literally in the restaurant I pulled a notebook out of my purse I wrote 3 pages of notes based off the conversation that we had.
It was about 20 minutes?
20 so I have about 3 pages of notes. So I still have some homework to do myself, and I hope you all take full what's the word? I hope you all grab everything that she's putting down and put it into practice, okay? Until next time, Tech Queen on the scene. We'll see y'all later. Bye.